Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Plains on the Prairie podcast. I'm Max.
And I'm Sam.
And today we have another episode of our North Dakota Aces series to bring you. This one is about Lieutenant Junior Grade Lloyd P. Heinzen of the U.S. Navy Reserve.
Yeah, so this is our 8th episode, another Hellcat. And I guess before we get into this, we got some good news for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam, I know you were the one doing the research. What did you find?
Yeah, we found a couple more aces.
Oh, gosh.
So, like we said, we had 10 aces originally. Well, we had 9. We went to 10. We have another. So Donald Backus, he's a 8th Air Force. So that'll be kind of fun. Just something in the European theater. We also found a bonus one that we may do at the end from World War One. So
Yeah,
that will be pretty cool.
A World War One ace. Think about that.
We have no other aces from any other conflict in North Dakota.
Yeah, no, I can't.
So no
Korea
or Vietnam.
Definitely not Vietnam.
So this it's kind of interesting. So we'll have 11 World War II aces, and then we'll have a 12th coming from World War One. So it's going to be really cool.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we'll dig right in.
Yeah, let's get started on Lloyd P. Heinzen. So Lloyd was born on May 22nd, 1918 in Garrison, North Dakota. I asked this, I think, with every question. Have you ever been to Garrison before?
I have, a long time ago.
Really?
It's kind of way up, kind of more of a flying trip, but it's up near Lake Sakakawea, northwest part of the state.
Oh, cool. Gotcha.
So, yeah.
I can't say I have. I've actually never been up that way. But Lloyd here was born there and grew up there and actually graduated from high school. And then following that, attended UND, or the University of North Dakota. And that is where he played football as a freshman, I believe. I think he redshirted his freshman year.
Yeah.
So, excuse me. But we are not a football podcast. We are an airplane podcast. No. So we will keep it rolling. So he joined the U.S. Naval Reserves at Naval Air Station Twin Cities on August 18th, 1941. So what, about 2 months or 4 months prior before Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, so he must have saw the buildup, and people were starting to join plenty before. Register was one of those. Yep. We had the Cohen tried to, joining the services. So yeah, he's one of those pre-Pearl Harbor ones.
And that's something that's, kind of, not to scare anyone or anything like that, but you see the kid, like, kind of the people sensing, like,
the war clouds.
Yeah, you hear the drums, and it's like, oh.
Well, and some people do it to get a leg up on promotions and whatnot, and some just like to be prepared, and both are reasonable for sure.
Absolutely. So after joining the U.S. Naval Reserves in the Twin Cities, he went to Jacksonville, Florida for pilot training, and then earned his carrier qualifications at Naval Air Station Miami, which is also in Florida. He received his wings and was commissioned as an ensign in the U.S. Navy Reserves on May 1st, 1942. So he would have been in training during, Pearl Harbor and some of those really big, early, 40 or 1942 actions, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, and he really didn't see any action until 1944, really.
Yeah.
I mean,
none that we were able to.
No, none. Yeah, and he was one of the first members of VF8.
Interesting.
Based off of the dates of the activation of the squadron and whatnot.
Gotcha. So he was promoted to lieutenant in May of 1943 and was assigned to VF8, which we were just talking about. And he was on board the Bunker Hill. So he got his first kills came during the Marianas Turkey Shoot, which we've covered before, which he was it on June 19th, 1944, or was it like spread out over a couple days?
It was spread out over a couple days, but the main day of the Turkey shoot was the 19th.
It was. Okay. Yep. So on that day, he managed to shoot down a Zero and a Ki-57 Asakumo, or a morning cloud in Japanese, which, we were talking about this earlier today. This guy, to pause it for a second, Heinzen, I think, has probably the most interesting
weird ones. I mean, I had to look up the name for, like, I had to look up the Allied code names.
Yeah, especially his last two are pretty interesting.
Weird. Yeah, so this was the Topsy.
Yep, the Topsy. So the Ki-57 Asakumo, which if you can't tell, I really like saying that. Yeah. So he bagged one of those, which I think it was a twin engine passenger.
Yeah, it almost looks like a Boeing 247 resemblance wise. So yeah, kind of a very uncommon aircraft. I think
Yes.
only about 100 were built, is what I was
Think
reading up on.
definitely less than 200.
Yeah, it
Yep.
was a very, short production plane. So
So where would he have found one of those during the
uh,
Marianas? Like, because they
well,
weren't combat
the thing
aircraft.
is, with Mariana's turkey shoot was in and around Philippines, right?
Oh yeah,
Well, that Mariana's island chain, and the Philippines was a jumping base at that point. You had a good mix of army and naval aircraft from the
gotcha.
Japanese. So anything KI pretty much is an army aircraft, KI 43 Oscar, KI 84, so on.
Gotcha. Interesting. So we had just mentioned that the Topsy was a passenger airplane. 3 days later, on June 22nd, 1944, he shot down an H-8K Emily flying boat, which I think we know what those are.
Yeah, big.
Yeah, huge flying boats. And I believe it was post-war, after being studied by the Allies. I think they came to the conclusion it was actually probably the most effective flying boat of the war, just for maritime patrol, given its range,
Its
armament.
range was insane. Same with the Mavis, but the Mavis was not as well defended. But yeah, I think I forget who it was. I think it might have been it might have been Czech or Frenberg. One of those two also shot down an Emily, if I remember right.
Interesting. So would they like come across these planes just in the middle of the Pacific?
They would be, pretty much just doing reconnaissance. They were used to search for the task force groups.
Yeah.
I mean, you find the carrier first, you win.
Mm-hmm.
The reason Midway went so well, we knew.
We found the carriers.
We had code. So we had the initiative there initially. So you find the carriers, you give yourself a better chance. Even if your aircraft doesn't make it back, if you get the relay,
there you go.
Yeah.
So a couple months later, on September 13th, 1944, during a bomber escort mission, they were attacked by a much larger force of Ki-43 Oscars. I know we've talked about Oscars in the past on this, podcast series. I like Oscars. I think they're pretty cool.
Yeah.
But Heinzen managed to shoot down one of them, and they actually repelled that huge attack force that was going against the bomber. So pretty interesting stuff there. On October 16th, Heinzen scored his final 2 kills against, I'd say, probably maybe not the strangest aircraft.
Strange considering the origination of the
aircraft. Managed to shoot down, and their designation was very strange. They were literally just called Navy transports. Did you see that?
Yeah.
There wasn't like Type 0. They're just Navy transports. And they were based on the Douglas DC-2, famous airliner of the 1930s, that were built, or they were license built by Nakajima. So, and their allied reporting name was the Tess.
Yeah.
So he must have jumped a formation of them or something like that.
It's such a weird. I mean, the DC-2s were very, like, you don't hear of DC-2. You come to DC-3 in your brain, but the Dutch had them. I mean, there was a lot of captured examples.
Yeah.
Or just bought examples. At the time the DC-2 came out, there was no, embargo or any, sanctions on the Japanese at that point.
So they could have actually been DC-2s that had just been pressed into military.
They could have easily just did a copy, kind of like
the Russian
U4. Exactly. You read my mind there. Yep. So reverse engineered. I didn't dig too deep on that.
Gotcha. But yeah, that I had heard that the Japanese had used DC-2s before, and DC-3s.
Yes.
Like you said, wherever they could get them, capture
at that point. At this point in the war, it was whatever you can get.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, if they're still using Oscars were outclassed at this point in the war. They're very nimble, but just like any other, it was a tinder. It was a tinderbox. Just everything just would blow up.
Absolutely. So those were his 2 final kills of the war, and he ended the war flying with VF-10 off of the USS Enterprise. But he remained in the Navy after the Second World War ended in August. And sadly, on November 11th, 1945, Heinzen was flying a Beechcraft SNB, which is the Navy version of the Beechcraft 18 or Beech 18, or the C-45 in Air Force or Army Air Force service. They're flying, I believe, back to Naval Air Station Albany or Naval Air Station, one of those many naval air stations in New York, and they crashed into Mount Beacon, New York, killing all on board. Unfortunately, one of the gentlemen that was on board was a passenger, Commodore Dixie Kiefer, who had gained fame at the Battle of Midway for his actions and had actually been wounded by a kamikaze in the final months of the war during the, I believe, the Filipino campaign. And yeah, that was a huge loss for not only the Navy but the U.S. government.
Right.
I believe that today at least at the foothill of the mountain or at the hill, they have a memorial, and it actually has all their names, including Heinzen's, which is pretty.
Yeah, and there's a lot of articles available out there if you're looking. It was the rescue effort was pretty interesting. They just had a bunch of people from the naval air stations come out and locals climb the mountain and look. There's reports of gunshots, like for signaling or something, but everybody, unfortunately, was unrecognizable when they got there, probably for case censoring issues here.
Yeah.
It was pretty rough. It was hard to identify, the people.
Gotcha. So. Yep. Heinzen his remains are buried in Arlington National Cemetery. So a fitting resting place for one of North Dakota's famous aces. So that wraps up our coverage on Heinzen himself. Sam, do you want to talk a little bit about VF-8?
Yeah, so VF-8 was another one of those just for the war.
I'm sensing a pattern.
Yeah, a lot of these Pacific, a lot of the squadrons, just in general, that the U.S. had, we were just temporary. We were such a huge military back then, unit-wise. Everybody was involved.
Yeah, but I got to ask, VF-1 and VF-2, they're still around, aren't they?
Yeah, why not VF-8? Good question.
Who knows? But then you have like VF-112.
Yeah.
Who knows?
That's a higher power than me that gets to choose that.
I'm not paid to make decisions for that.
Yeah, we're not paid to do this either. No, VF-8 was a wartime squadron, like I said. Fighting 8 is what they would always call, or the VF just stands for heavier than air fighter. The V, cool. The V stands for heavier than air. They were formed in June 1943 and disestablished in November 1945. Earlier than some of the other ones. Some of them have been deactivated in 1946, or
they managed to make it a couple a year or two after
through some of the easing off, like maybe part of occupation forces. And they primarily served aboard the Bunker Hill. That was the only carrier actually they served aboard.
Really?
It was USS Bunker Hill. And then after they had a shakedown cruise actually aboard another carrier. It was forget the carrier, but it was another Essex class.
For some of the listeners, can you explain what a shakedown cruise is?
A shakedown cruise is just kind of a get into it type cruise. You're getting, everybody's acclimated to a carrier life, getting the
kind of
a new carrier.
The jitters.
Yep. Some of the times the new carriers go on a shakedown cruise. And then they went aboard the Bunker Hill. And then after their time in, Battle of the Philippine Sea and Leyte Gulf and all that stuff, they were bouncing around different naval air stations, Alameda, some of the other West Coast ones. Not much on the squadron itself, history-wise, kind of hard to dig up. There was another VF-8 prior to pre-Midway,
42 to 40 or 41 to 42.
41 to 42.
Yeah.
So that easily mixed up. There's VF-8 was part of that big task group. I mean, Battle of the Phil Sea or Marianas Turkey Shoot was huge. We have two aces. Two of them have shot down aircraft during the Battle of the Philippine Sea. So it's hundreds and hundreds of aircraft were shot down. So it's cool that a couple North Dakotans got into the mix.
Yeah, took part in that. Absolutely.
Yeah. So and then they only flew F6, F3, and 5 Hellcats. The profile, if you want to come to the museum and see the aces wall, the profile shows an F6, F3 with the 3-tone scheme,
like light blue,
dark blue,
gray.
Yeah, like a light gray.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that's a really standard paint
Yep.
scheme. Everything
And
was really standardized.
that kind of goes to say, with I think all of our Navy Hellcat pilots, it's hard to pinpoint an exact warbird unless it says,
Yeah.
Heinzen underneath the cockpit, which I don't even know if they did that. Did they?
They did, yeah.
Okay.
Like you can see in the thumbnail for Register, it has
Oh,
his
yeah,
name
cash,
in there.
yeah.
Yep. So there was that, but again, repeating ourselves a little bit from our past videos. Find a Hellcat, pretty similar.
Yep.
I mean, like we talked about with Borley's VF-15, Mincy 3s out there. That's a really, I mean,
it's
McCampbell
probably
was
the
top
most
scorer at
famous
Navy Ace.
Hellcat. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we have one more Hellcat left, so we're gonna probably have some repeat in that section. But the Navy, all their squadrons are huge.
Yeah.
I mean, but to have aces out of them still is, they had some history.
And that it just goes to show, like, man, there must have been, you got to think about these dogfights, and you see the movies and the TV shows and the video games, but to have actually seen just swarms of aircraft, like you don't know who's who and stuff.
Right. It's not, yeah, you don't have a tag on everybody.
No.
So yeah, it was just basically getting into that cockpit, trying to imagine what it's like. I mean, reading some of these books like Borley's, little recounts in that Fabled 15 book and stuff like that. It's just amazing to see. Just put yourself into that shoe.
Speaking of cockpits, Sam, I believe you have a little something to share about what you did today.
Yeah, I joined you in the T6 club.
Yeah.
So yeah, Max, thank you again. Had this really cool opportunity come up to fly in a painted as an SNJ T6.
Yeah.
Around Fargo here. We flew down to Kindred with Dick Springer, longtime supporter of their museum, Kelly Paris as well.
Long time member.
And we got to tour the Odegaard Wings factory down in Kindred. Something we should probably get on and cover. It's really impressive. It's a 2 or 3 man shop, and they're churning out wings all the time for people. They have Corsair parts as well. And I forgot to mention before, there's Lockheed Model 12 wings there too. So really old Lockheed wings.
Wow.
And then got to see the Odegaard Corsair that's in there, their project that they've been working on for a couple decades. So really cool though.
Yeah. Did they say anything about the history of that Corsair?
There's not much known. I couldn't tell you. I mean, the wings are sitting in a different hangar. Unfortunately, since Bob passed, there hasn't been a lot of progress. Casey's, his son's a pretty busy guy. But I also saw in the back, I didn't get a chance to go look at it. It looked like an L2 in there. But yeah, they're really, I mean, I work out of Kindred a lot, but I don't really get to dig around, so it's really fun to do that.
I've actually never been to Kindred.
And there's there's 2 R4360 engines, one in Kelly's hangar and one sitting right outside. So a couple WASP majors. So you can just about imagine what those go on. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a really fun opportunity. Got to get some cool pictures. By the time this is up, there'll be an Instagram post, I imagine, on our profile. So hopefully that's old news for you guys. So yeah, it was a really fun opportunity. Yeah, so we have just a few more aces left. We got 4 still, or 3. I can't do math.
We have 2 now that we have discovered. What, 2, 3 more?
2 more. One World War One. One World War II. So we have 2 more Army Air Force and 1 Navy. So we're just gonna go back to another Army Air Force here next. It'll probably be the one we found, and then we'll go back to the Navy, and then back to our final Air Force one, and then our World War One ace.
Perfect. So, I'm excited.
Yeah,
we're gonna close this one out strong, and then
we have plenty of other things on the docket. Finding more and more local World War II aviators. We have plenty of interviews we're trying to line up too. So it should be a fun winter.
Absolutely.
Can't say that much around here.
No. So. Yeah. Fun winter in Fargo.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going on up in our brains. But yeah. Sam, thank you for joining me today. And unless you have anything else.
Oh, it's been a lot of fun. We'll catch you guys next week.
All right. See ya.